Hey, this is Mr. Nason, and wow, I'm going to turn off my email. There we go. And we are looking at chapter one of Oceanography. And the first thing we should probably talk about is what the heck is oceanography? So, a lot of people think that oceanography is the study of things like fish and penguins and whales and cute otters and things like that. And that is true, that's part, but oceanography really has four or five parts. First off, we're looking at the geology. So in here you can see that we've got, in this picture, we've got continents, we have oceans, and if we were to peer underneath the water, would see mountains underwater, and we would see volcanoes underwater, and we would see valleys underwater, and we'd see canyons, just like we see on the surface of the earth. We're also looking at the chemistry of the water. What kind of chemicals are found in seawater? How do they get there? And how do those affect all the things in the ocean? We're also looking at physics. Physics is the study of like how things move. So, for example, how do waves form in the ocean? And what about tides? How the ocean water seems to rise and fall with tides. Um, and we're also looking at, yes, the biology. We'll get that to that kind of at the very end of oceanography, but what living things live in the ocean and how do they kind of get along with each other? So that's kind of where we're going to be taking off. The first thing I want you to know, and we're going to limit these to five things, and I've already explained one of them, that oceanography is about many things, but our main point of this chapter is right here. The oceans cover 71% of the planet. And on a test, I'm not going to ask you, is it 70%? Is it 71%? Is it 72%? 70% is close enough. But most of the Earth's surface is covered by water, which is why oceanography is so important. We can read here that the average depth of the ocean is about 3.5 kilometers. And what that means is if I set you out in the middle of the ocean and you were to try to dive to the bottom, on average, some places would be deeper, some places would be less deep, but you'd be swimming about 3.5 kilometers deep, which is about 2 miles. Again, some places, like you've walked in the beach, it's only a couple feet deep. In other places, it's actually much deeper than even the Grand Canyon. So again, our second point is that most of the Earth is covered by ocean, about 70% of it. All right. Our third thing that we want to know about the oceans is we want to know the names of the oceans. So you'll see here in this map that there are 5 purple boxes, starting with the world's largest ocean, which is the Pacific Ocean, the second largest ocean, which is the Atlantic Ocean, the third largest ocean, which is the Indian Ocean, and then you'll see here at the top we have the Arctic Ocean, which is the smallest, and then the Southern Ocean. Now, for our class, to keep things simple, we're just going to know the big three. We're going to ignore the Arctic Ocean because a lot of textbooks actually don't consider that to be an ocean. They call it a sea. And then the Southern Ocean really has no boundaries that are physical. So let's talk about these three oceans. First the Pacific, then the Atlantic, and then the Indian. So when you go to the beach, here's California over here, when we go to the beach, when we go to Newport Beach or Huntington Beach or Laguna Beach, we are swimming in the Pacific Ocean, and it is by far today the largest ocean. So here we have Mexico, California, Oregon, Washington, Canada, Alaska. Then we have Russia, which is part of Asia. We have China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, most of these islands, which are sometimes called Polynesia, part of Australia, and then going way down here into Antarctica, and then along the west coast of South America, Argentina, Chile, and then into Central America. So this is the Pacific Ocean, and it is by far the biggest ocean. Pacific actually comes from the word pacify, like you give a baby a pacifier. It's supposed to mean it's the calm ocean, but it's not always calm. And in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is maybe somewhere you've been before, which are the Hawaiian Islands right here. Our second largest ocean is the Atlantic Ocean. And much of the United States, when they go to the beach, they're going to the Atlantic Ocean. So if you lived in Texas or Florida or Washington, D.C. or Boston, those are all along the Atlantic Ocean, as much as South America and much of Africa and Europe. So if you went to Spain, or you went to Israel over here, or you went to France or England, you'd be swimming in the Atlantic Ocean. And then our last ocean, which is the ocean that probably most of us have never been to, unless you've been to countries like India, or maybe this part of Australia, which is where most people do not live. This is the Indian Ocean, and we can remember its name because of the country of India is right here. So parts of Africa, this island Madagascar, much of the Mid-East, which would be Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq. Those are all people who went to the beach there. They'd be swimming in the Indian Ocean. So 3 oceans: Pacific, which is our ocean in California; Atlantic, which is the second largest, and it's, again, the other half, the east coast of the U.S. When they go to the beach, they're swimming in the Atlantic Ocean. And then the smallest ocean is the Indian Ocean. All right, so let's review our 3 main topics. Number 1, we talked about oceanography as being the study of the world's oceans, which is, again, not just about animals, but it's about the water, the waves, the tides, the chemistry, the geology. Second, we know the names of the 3 biggest oceans: the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian. The third thing we want to cover today are these lines on the Earth. And these lines are going to help us understand our next section, which is how people explored the oceans. Now, these lines are not real lines. If you sailed out in the ocean, you would not find stripes on the sea. But these help us to help navigate or move around the Earth or tell where people are. This is probably the most famous line right here that you've heard of before, called the equator. So if the Earth, which is round, in this map that's much fatter than it is to show all of the Earth's oceans, it's kind of stretched out. This middle belt around the Earth is called the equator. And you'll notice it has a number here called 0. And this is called a line of latitude. And as we go north, the numbers, the lines of latitude, get bigger. So this would be 20 degrees north latitude, 40 degrees north latitude, 60 degrees north latitude, 80 degrees north latitude. And if you could go to the North Pole, that would be 90 degrees north latitude. And then similarly, if we went to the south, this is 20 degrees south, 40, 60, 80, and then the South Pole would be 90 degrees. So when people are traveling around the ocean in boats, they always want to know how far north or south they are, and those are called lines of latitude. And they have numbers from 0 to 90 north, and 0 to 90 south. The next kind of line are the ones that go up and down. And these lines are always long, and they look like a bunch of L's. You can imagine some lowercase L's. And these are called lines of longitude. And they tell us how far east or west we are. Now, where you start this at 0 is totally just up to people. And so, hey, Joanne, I'm recording, that's okay. They arbitrarily picked a line right here, which went through Europe because Europeans came up with a system. They decided we're going to be at 0 degrees longitude. And as we move this way, we are going to longitudes of numbers that are west. And then as we move this way, we're going longitude lines of east. And over here on this side of the earth, we're at 180 degrees. Where we live right here is about 130 degrees west longitude and about 33 degrees north longitude. All right, and the last thing we want to learn about today are early explorers. The only thing you need to know is it started about 1,000 years ago in Polynesia, but most of the exploration of the earth took place about 500 years ago, first with the Vikings, and then with people like Columbus and Magellan. And then we learned about, earlier, Charles Darwin, who sailed around the earth about 150 years ago. All right, so that's all you need to know about oceanography to begin with. Bye.